or depending on where you are in the world. Please say hello in the chat and where you're calling in from. My name is Sokotra and I'm a representative from the Scrum User Group of South Africa, and I'm going to be the host for tonight's webinar. We have a very exciting group of panelists that have joined us, and we've got some juicy questions to ask them this evening. So the title of the webinar tonight is the Agile industry in sort of the post-lockdown era that we're kind of facing at the moment. And we're going to do a quick introduction of each of our wonderful panelists. I'm going to ask them to just tell us who they are, where they are, what industry they're representing, and I'm going to ask ladies first for Jo to kick us off.
Thanks, Sokotra. Hi, everyone. I am Joanne Perold. I am in Johannesburg at the moment. It's been a beautiful day. It's getting a little bit chilly now, but it's been one of those beautiful sunny Joburg winter days. I'm a coach for Agile 42, and I'm very excited to be here today. And I think next, let's have one of the new gentlemen. Let's call on Victor. Hi, Victor.
Hi, everyone. I'm Victor. I'm from Brazil. I'm in São Paulo right now. I'm one of the board directors for the Agile Alliance, a nonprofit organization that aims to spread in the Agile world. And I'm also a CEO of a software company here in Brazil. I'll take now to Berto to introduce yourself.
Berto, you're on mute. There we go.
There we go. Sorry, I was reading the comments. So I'm Bertie from the Free State. I allow me to introduce myself as Bertie from the Free State because I really believe in agility and how we can help organizations to be better. I'm from Spry Agility, a company small. We focus mainly on flow. How work flows through organizations and truly helping teams to be agile. Bias, maybe you can go.
Thanks, Bertu. Yeah, so Bias de Gregorio, IQ Business, partner at IQ Business, been there 20 years, so a long time. I look after a team of about 28 Agile consultants who do coaching, training, and consulting work. That's me. Ken.
Hi, my name is Ken Annandale, and believe it or not, I'm locked down in Mauritius, which is a really tough place to be, of course. And it's lovely and warm over here at the moment. In fact, I hail from a law enforcement background. I'm also an audiometrist, which is occupational hearing loss, and I'm a researcher and writer, and now I speak at conferences around the world. So from Mauritius and originally Cape Town. Lovely to have you guys here, and it's nice to be on the panel. Thank you so much. Okay, the next person I would imagine would have to be Pavel. You're going to have to introduce yourself, my friend.
Thank you, Ken. I'm Pavel. I'm an Agile coach and trainer, and I'm the founder of a company called Think Agile, which do Agile coaching and training here in South Africa, but also worldwide.
Great. Thanks everyone for introducing yourselves. And welcome to anyone who just joined. We're going to have quite an interesting discussion this evening around the Agile industry post-lockdown. And if you do have any specific questions that you want to ask, there is a Q&A function in this type of Zoom setup. So if you do have a specific question, you can either post it there or you can post it in the chat. And we've left a little bit of time at the end of the session just to answer some of those questions. We are also going to be recording this session, so it will be made available on YouTube afterwards as well. So just to let you know about that. And we're going to kick off with our first question. And each of our panelists will be answering this question. What impact did the lockdown have on you, your team, and your organization? And I'll let the first person be Bias.
Thank you. Thanks, Sokotra. So besides, I think last week was the first time I actually went into the office and trying on my trousers, and I realized I put on a bit of weight. So that's a personal impact. But from a work point of view, it's been obviously the initial couple of weeks were kind of tough with two little girls. But I think they realized that daddy's here at work. So how to kind of balance the work-life balance was quite a challenge initially, but I think we get into a bit of routine. I find my own place in my bedroom because that makes more sense for me. You know, like I said, initially it was kind of tough, but getting to kind of a more productive mode of work. If people know me, I tend to work late hours. My kind of work-life balance isn't my favorite thing, but being able to manage that within trying to finish my work at 6 o'clock and then spend the rest of the evening. So that's a good positive for me. I think negative, I am quite a social person, so trying to miss the social interaction at work, I think that's the biggest one. From a team point of view, it's had quite a big impact obviously from a training and a coaching perspective. A lot of our clients have made decisions to either pause transformation work or pause training because it isn't it's seen as more of a luxury rather than something that is essential. So it's been a bit of an impact for us. I mean, we looked at April, probably I would say about 40% of our business was impacted from that point of view. And then even from May and June, we're slowly starting to get out of that. I think as our customers are realizing that this is probably going to be the ways of working going forward, they're starting to build trust in remote training and remote coaching and that perspective. So are we starting to see a little bit of a move there? From the broader organization, so we're part of about 650 people, consultants in the team at IQ Business. And I think we built quite a bit of a resilient business model, and we've been fortunate because we're seen as essential services because we supply services to banking and financial services that are themselves essential services. So we've managed to ride some of the impact. Having said that, we have quite a large bench. I think 130 people is the last count of the number of people looking for engagement. So that's a big number for an organization such as ours. So obviously trying to manage that effectively and obviously working with our customers to see how we can partner with them. You know, a lot of our customers have asked for up to 30% discounts on our rates. And that's been quite challenging because how do you still remain profitable while still adding value? Knowing that hopefully that this too shall pass, and we know that it will, and you know, building those relationships with our customers that after this phase we can continue with that work. So that's me, and I'll tag Joe.
Thanks, BS. Yeah, so from a personal perspective, it feels like I'm on a roller coaster sometimes. I have these like moments where I think I know what's going on, and then these moments of like, oh my goodness, I'm incompetent and I don't know anything about anything anymore. And then I'm like, okay, no, I think I got this, and we got some routine, and so it goes. And sometimes they're like daily and sometimes weekly, and all of the things happen. All of the feelings are being felt, I think. I don't think I'm alone in that. The uncertainty that we're faced with at the moment is quite hectic. I'm lucky to have a really, really awesome team here in South Africa, and they are really supportive and have just been like totally amazing, doing whatever they could to try and help the business and keep us going. So that's been really, really cool. The same with BS, we had quite a big impact in terms of our training and coaching business. Either things that were going to start just didn't start, or it was a struggle to get new business. We managed to maintain some of our existing clients, but some of them are also not quite convinced that remote coaching is the same. Although I think that that's starting to change. It feels like there's some energy in the system now that's starting to change those kinds of things. From an organizational point of view, globally, so Agile 42 is a global organization, and it's been interesting to watch it from a global perspective. So we've had colleagues in Italy, and so sometimes it feels like we're 2 weeks ahead, because when things were really bad in Italy, then it was just before they got really bad here in South Africa. So we were kind of feeling that really badness almost ahead of the game. But now we're also feeling a little bit of the optimism a little ahead of the game. So Italy's starting to come out of it now. Things are starting to move. Their business is looking better. Germany as well. Some of the other, it's been interesting. We've also got a Swedish team, so it's been interesting to see how what's been happening in Sweden, given the way that they handle things, and it's still been very quiet for them on a business level. So that's been quite interesting. I do think things are starting to kind of change, but the cool part is that we've been doing a lot of international collaboration, which has been really awesome. A lot of international learning from each other, and a lot of experimentation, product experimentation, marketing experimentation, new products, trying to get new products into different markets, basically drinking our own champagne, really, like building up resilience. Yeah, so that's kind of what's been happening for us. Yeah, I'm going to call on Pavel.
Thank you, Joe. I think I'm in the same, we're in the same boat as everyone. April was bad. We lost about 60% of the revenue. And now retrospectively, when I started to analyze when the revenue was lost, it's a bigger corporation, a company. So companies actually don't book with us training. So our coaching engagements, if it's a coaching engagement, just carried on. But so it's very hard to find new work now. And the sales cycle is so long, and it's just so easy to lose a lead. But so we also see a bit of a recovery now. So there's more bookings and more inquiries from companies again. So I think we had people who personally invest into learning. I think it's a great time for them because e-learning is cheaper, live online is cheaper. So I think we retain that, but it's a company business, that kind of business to business. So my personal way of dealing with it is just work hard. And, when I work hard, the time flies. Yesterday I had a relatively less busy day and I just dragging along. So sometimes, bury yourself in work is the best way for me to deal with that. And I think, my team kind of felt the same. So we did an incredible amount of work. We did those things we never had time to do. But I think personally hit me quite hard because a few weeks back. So I'm from Belarus. It's an country in Eastern Europe. I think it's very famous now alongside with Sweden because they don't have any lockdown. In fact, they still play soccer and have public events. And, about 2.5 weeks ago, my mother got sick. So we don't know if it's coronavirus or anything, but, this testing is very hard to get even in South Africa. But like when you watch the news versus when it happens to people around you, it's very different. So and you really start to worry about it. So she's fine now. She has recovered, right? So, but we will probably never even know if it was coronavirus or not. So I think that's that level of uncertainty, not just in business, but like in personal life, and worry maybe not about myself, but worry about people around you. So what if something happens to them? So I think that's that added complexity of the situation. All right, so should we go to Victor?
So I can get two perspectives from the Agile Alliance aspect. We are a global mostly online organization. So even though most of our staff members and board members are located in the North America, we have members all over the globe. So even New Zealand, India, Brazil, and other places in Europe and everything. So from that perspective, quarantine imposed and lockdowns, they mostly affected all of the events that we run. So we run multiple events over the year. We have a technical event, a big with 3,000 plus attendees, Agile event, and events in India, events in South America. So I guess the main problem from our perspective would be, well, so I guess we won't be having any events in 2020, right? And that generated a whole problem, which is we are committed to hotels, we're committed to air tickets and everything. So that has gotten us into a point where we've been working hard in order to reduce the type of the financial impact that would bring to the organization. Luckily, we've been working hard to maintain a robustness to the organization, so that was we were able to address that in the best possible way. But that also generated a lot of initiatives into going online and helping to generate more content that our community normally is looking for. So we've seen an increase in the access on the website of the content, which is basically a lot of articles and information for whoever is beginning to their journey on Agile, or if they want to look something more specific about Agile accounting, for example. So, and we started to experiment a lot more into podcasting and webinars and things of that nature. But overall, our face-to-face interactions, they got stalled. So we're not having probably any face-to-face interactions this year, and we're trying to make it work on an online basis. As in Brazil specifically, in my role as a founder and CEO of a software company, we are around 100 people, and so we've been quarantined since 13th of March. And for the organization to go from a fully co-located organization to a fully remote organization was we thought that the work part would be the hardest part of that, but because everything we do, and even like the agile principles and practices like DevOps, like all of the technical infrastructure that we run that's all cloud native, that was really fine. The worst part is now people are in their homes, not necessarily with the best setup for working remotely, not necessarily in the best organization to be able to have a place where they can work. They might not have, they might be with the children at home, and that generate a lot of challenges. They might have problems with their spouses or family, they're getting sick, or they're in the case of the Brazilian economy, there have been massive layoffs and problems that people can't find jobs, and or they're being laid off of their jobs. So that generates a whole nother complex problems that we're trying to face as an organization, and like for the business aspect of our organization, we're mostly working with financial institutions. So now it's not being much of a problem on that aspect, because it's an opportunity for financial institutions to make available credit for other organizations. So the market in that aspect has been positive. But in a way, what we've been seeing after 2 months in these situations is that whatever organizations were trying to do before COVID in Brazil, now everything is kind of 2 months delayed. So now we're kind of seeing organizations in the aspect of prospecting new projects and trying to figure out how they're going to get their deadlines done 2 months where everything was just stopped into the work. As an organization, we're only going back to the office after June. Even though there's no lockdown measures being put into place, they're mostly quarantine, soft lockdown measures that are happening in Brazil. But we decided to have our team working remotely until at least the end of June. So this is one aspect for us. So Ken, would you like to share your thoughts on this?
Thanks, Victor. Appreciate that. Our business model is like a franchise. We have about 70 franchisees around the country and sub-Saharan Africa. And one of our concerns is that all of a sudden we had to rewrite the business model completely, because they were trainers going into organizations, and all the bookings, all my speaking engagements, everything were canceled. So my biggest concern was for them, because obviously it's a license-based business and we license people to use our training material. And if they don't use our training material, obviously they can't generate the income, blah, 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 blah. And you can see the knock-on effect of that. So the two effects that it's had, oh, by the way, I'm a cyclist. It's terrible, just not being able to cycle. It's crazy. Any case. So we've now, for the first time, been able to cycle again. Yay, but not very far. So our concern was that our trainers didn't have the technology. They're fundamental guys and gals. They just didn't have the skills. and none of them were online, and nobody used any of the technology that was available. And it was a real face-to-face business, and we've had to reinvent all of that. So we've gone through that process, and the irony is that our turnover has doubled, because we're in the business of writing training material, and this COVID-19 is an occupational health and safety issue when it comes to workplaces. So we have this deluge of requests, and because for the last 3 weeks I haven't slept much, and we developed some training material which has now gone into the workplace, and now that's our big focus, is just around that specific topic. Is preparing those trainers so that they can get up and running. And there's so much that I have to learn. Fortunately, and lastly, I've got 2 millennials living in the house. My daughter came on holiday with her boyfriend, and they've been locked down. They can't get back to South Africa, but they're rejoicing. So we've been able to catch up with a lot of the things that we knew we should do from a business perspective and structure. Wow, it's been like brilliant for me. I've learned so much about this process, but there's more to learn. Okay, with that, over to Berta.
Sorry. So for me, I think personally, what was a challenge right from the start was not being able to go for a run. Ken, I like to exercise, so not being able to go for a run was a big thing for me. And then I spoke to someone the other day who said it was level 4. The announcement of level 4 in South Africa was just a change for runners to go out and run between 6 and 9. And for her, it was a problem because she's not running. So all of us experienced this in a different way. And not being able to run was a big thing for me. I think from an organization's point of view, it's basically the same than what all the other guys said. Also, not being able to train, there was a decision made by the Kanban University not to train a specific course, which is a very popular class, and we couldn't train it up to now. So now we can train. So now we can advertise that class again. So I think, and I hope that there will be some business coming in from that point of view. But we are quite really small at this point in time, Spry. The teams that we are with at the moment, challenging in the beginning to switch from being able to talk to each other in the office to now in a space where we have to do everything virtually. So that was kind of a shift for the guys, but we managed to get there quite fast, and the guys are into the swing of things now. But all in all, I think for me, and also I have 11 and a 12-year-old, my 2 girls. They are fantastic when it comes to doing schoolwork. But then I've got a son, and he's 3 years old, and he does not understand what's happening.
Doesn't understand lockdown.
No, don't try and explain it to him. He just wants his friends, and he wants to go and play with his friends. So he's been under my desk and nibbling at my ankles while we have stand-ups in the morning. So it's been a real challenge to keep the little guy busy. But we looking forward. I'm looking forward to the next couple of weeks. See what's going to happen.
Thanks, Berta.
Pavel.
Pavel's already gone. I think we've got everybody there. There's a couple of really great questions that tie into what we kind of wanted to get into tonight. And the first question I'm very eager to ask a few of you is, what are going to be the new norms in the Agile industry? I hope that this is going to answer Olga's question around what will business agility look like going forward, and maybe a bit more specific to her question was around delivery and innovation and different ways of working. There's also a question around, is working from home going to be the new norm in your opinion? So maybe we can tie that in. What is the next step? What are the things that are going to really come into play now after this experience? And maybe we can go to Pavel to kick us off with that.
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I think what we've seen with some of our clients already is that it's funny that for a lot of our clients, rent is one of the big expenses, and now it's complete waste because no one's using those office spaces. So we've heard of some clients actually giving up the office spaces, even some bigger banks. So I've heard of one bank is actually letting go of a few towers they have, and they're saying, we're going to optimize people working from home. We're going to work a little bit more like a consultant company where you don't have a dedicated desk, but you have a pool of desks, and however many people come, they'll just share those desks. So I think we're going to see that. I don't think we're going to see completely remote work, because it's hard, and maybe we can chat about the challenges of working completely remote later. But I think we might see some hybrid approach where no one is required to work from the office the full week, right? So you might see 3 days at the office, 2 days at home, or some sort of combination, some sort of hybrid approach. And obviously, because of that, I think we even though we're not allowed to travel, I think we're in the process of creating a global workplace. So where if I'm not working from the office, but I'm working from, then I can work from a different city. So so maybe I don't need to be in Johannesburg, right? So the climate is harsh. Maybe I can be by the sea and still work. And maybe I don't even need to be in South Africa, right? So maybe I don't need to be in New York anymore. So, and it's probably going to have quite interesting implication to to the real estate market as well, because I think that office space, the fancy expensive office space in Cape Town or Sandton, or what's going to happen to that. But I think we all went through this extreme learning. We've been pushed to this. Imagine everyone in South Africa taking a course on remote facilitation and remote work, right? So without their will, we've all been trained up. Are we going to throw away this skill? Absolutely not. So if we already trained up of working remotely, why don't we keep using it? And why don't we find situations where it actually works well and it's beneficial, and there's some cost saving for the company? But I also don't think it works everywhere. So no wonder what the rest of panelists think.
Thanks, Pavel. Victor, I'm quite curious to see what your thoughts are from I guess, a broader international perspective.
I guess the main aspect of what changed on our organization as Agile Alliance was we're now communicating much more than before. So one of the things that happened during quarantine pandemic is double down into communications and all of the situations where we might schedule a meeting. Now we're tending to communicate much more and trying to come up with ways to interact much faster than we used to prior to this situation. In my organization, one of the things that we actually had to do is coming up with ways to still generate that sense of camaraderie and the connection that we have with other people. Because when you go to a hybrid approach, and we've tried that before, whoever's online tends to feel isolated, tends not to feel connected to the team. So and now what happened is everyone is online, right? So we need to have touch points where we're not only talking about work, we're not only talking about a delivery that needs to be done, a workshop that we need to give to a client, a planning meeting. So we tend to generate multiple other ways of connecting, being that a happy hour with whoever wants to join in, or in our own systems we have a channel. There's video and audio connected full day, and whoever wants to join in just join in, and they can talk about whatever is happening in their life. And we even have specific meetings that are dedicated to talk about the struggles and whatever people is doing. And one of the other things that we actually happened that helped a lot into with our clients is that some of our clients, especially in retail, they thought that everything was sorted out in their business. So suddenly they have 70% loss in their revenue, and they didn't figure it out how they're going to sell their products online, because that was might be an initiative that would have a delivery date for the end of the year, and now they have to be able solve that in a matter of weeks. So that generated this process of innovation that we were not expecting, right? And because we're talking about in this agile concept, everything that used to take us 3 months, now we have to make a decision in a matter of weeks, and actually change that decision because everything changes every couple of days, right? So that even changed the way that we do the operations of the whole business. So the whole thing about the business agility of understanding how the market is behaving and making the decision of what is the most important to do now. It's a way that we changed in the way that we operate. So this is also a change that I see happening. And from our perspective, we might be able to experiment as we are going back to the office. We might be able to experiment, not everyone in the office and people being 100% remote, but I'm a bit skeptical in that comparing how well we're doing today of how well that was going to work when everything is back to normal, right? When schools are open and we don't have like kids running around while you're trying to do a business call, right? So and specifically how that affects different people, right? If you're a single parent and you have 2 kids in the house, you cannot assume that you're doing a good work in another situation, right? Because now it's an emergency to the source. So we're not even considering this experience a proper remote experience, right? We're more like trying to come up with ways to make it work, and after that we'll probably have a more critical approach to understand if remote work it is possible.
Thanks, Victor. And maybe that it's a good segue there into what the next question is, and that's around, you mentioned a lot of the challenges and what are some of the new norms that we're going to be expecting to see in the industry, but what are we going to be saying goodbye to is another interesting one to ponder. And Bias, I'd like maybe you to just maybe touch on and add on that. What are we saying goodbye to? What do you think is not coming back after all of this?
Look, I was thinking about this question. I'm not sure if we're going to say goodbye to anything for the long term. I think as things will normalize, perhaps in the next 6 to 12 months, I think some of our old behaviors will still come back. I think we attach some of those old things that we hold dear to ourselves. I think in our industry, probably in the next 6 to 12 months, I view that possibly the large-scale agile transformations may be put on hold for a bit, even though it's a little bit counterintuitive, because actually you need agility to deal with some of the challenges that we're dealing with at the moment. So unfortunately, people that are paid much more than I am are making these decisions around cost efficiencies. So how do we be more cost efficient? And you'll start seeing organizations such as Dimension Data, Ultron, etc., obviously retrenching staff as their vehicle to cut costs. So I think from that point of view, I think that's something that to consider. I think predictability, and I think maybe Batu, I'd like him to also add to this, because from a data and understanding empirical data, how do we become predictable in the next 6 to 12 months around this massive uncertainty that we're dealing with? Organizations, we're busy going through budgeting processes at the moment, right? And I'm going like, how do you want me to budget for next financial year? Tell me exactly, because any number I give you is actually even more of a guess than I did last year. But so I think predictability is something that we're probably going to say goodbye to. But I'd like to actually also understand from Batu, from his point of view, from a data, being the scientific approach.
So
let's go to Berta, and then if we have time, we can go to Ken.
Cool.
So Bias, I was thinking to run some research in this time to ask teams to send me their data. I'll do it for free, just to look at their data and see what we see in the data. Do we see an increase in throughput? Do we see the same throughput? Do we see teams throughput dropping? And just in the conversations that I had with some of the people, they said, Bertu, we are actually seeing that the teams are getting more done during this period. And the data point, if we use this data point to try and predict whether we're going to work from the office or work from home is going to be better, we would make a big mistake. Because this data point in lockdown is not a good data point to use. It should be a data point before lockdown, during lockdown, and a period after lockdown to see what the throughput of teams look like. Because this is not going to be a good data point to make decisions on. So I almost want to say, like the COVID scientists, it's up in the air. It's a very difficult thing at this point in time to predict where things are going, but certainly seeing way better throughput with teams. But then you get the Scrum Masters who tell me, but Bertu, my teams are bored. They can't go to the shops. They can't go to a restaurant. They can't go and have a beer with a friend. So they're bored. They actually sit and work. That's all they can do. That's why we see an increase in throughput. And I've seen it with some of the data points that I've checked with some of the teams. There's a definite increase in throughput, but it's a bad data point to use to make decisions on.
That's a really good point, Berto. And Ken, I'm curious, in your opinion, what are we saying goodbye to? And I guess getting into the next question around what the challenges are.
I saw one of the questions was about classrooms and the way we used to present training. It's all going to change now. One of the things we're going to have to say goodbye to is the way we look at the whole CETA, SACWA, NQF thing, because already the cycle from the facilitation to the verification could be months and months and months. Now, if we're splitting groups into smaller groups, it's going to take years to certify anybody, which is a problem. And I think one of the big things that I've been dealing with our franchisees is that we've been talking to them about setting up their homes as a workplace. So all the common health and safety things like dust and noise and lighting and ventilation and ergonomics and first aid and firefighting and fire, they all apply to a home. And we did a survey amongst them probably only about 7 responded, but nobody had first aid boxes. Those 7 didn't have first aid boxes that were substantive. They didn't have evacuation routes. And in South Africa, one of the challenges we have, of course, is power. So with power outages, there was no emergency lighting in the house. And then, of course, with power outages, people couldn't open their electric gates to get out because the power was off. And it was just like a nightmare. So they're now in these little fire traps. And we're going, oh my gosh. Okay, so that's the one side of it. And I think we're going to have to say goodbye to a lot of the ways that we just think of the workplace. Because now that office is a workplace. And there was the ergonomics regulation that came out in December, and we've been trying to determine whether that applies to office furniture that's used at home. So we're going to see occupational hygiene health issues coming from people working at home now being reported back in the workplace under the compensation legislation. Thank goodness we have some bright minds that are dealing with this bias. I'm not sure if that actually addresses but it is a serious, serious problem. And the last thing, of course, is people are setting up studios so that they're kicking kids out of bedrooms and getting the cars out of the garage so they can set up a studio so they can broadcast from there.
Thanks, Ken. And I guess touching on the challenges, because there are quite a few. Joe, I don't know if you want to add, some people have already been mentioning in the chat things like Zoom fatigue, having your whole family or your kids with you. Somebody even mentioned in one of the questions around trust and how do you just connect with your colleagues if people aren't willing to show videos and things like that. So there are a lot of challenges. I don't know if you want to add or comment on those.
Thanks, Sokotra. I think there's so much out there. I think the big one for me is this learning to be okay with uncertainty. I don't think that the levels of uncertainty and volatility in our world are going to get super better fast. And we speak about when things go back to normal, but I'm not really sure that they will go back to normal. I don't think it's going to be a going back to what there was before. I think that there's going to be a going back to something, and we don't actually really know what that something looks like. But there's all these challenges around. I think there's like people were saying there's Zoom fatigue, there's physical events now all going online, and so now people have got more options for more events that they can choose from, like all over the globe. It's much easier for people to join these events. So how do you get yours positioned in the right way? The same with companies, like products, product placement, all of that kind of thing is going to be a whole new set of challenges. Being able to pivot and being able to work really fast. It almost feels like resilience and agility are going to be must-haves to be able to cope with the speed of what's kind of happening at the moment. And at the same time, people aren't, they're not sure of how do we move in that direction. So one of the things I'm hoping for is, as Bias was saying, that there's going to be this pause for these big transformations. And I actually hope that that's one thing we say goodbye to totally, because the big transformations weren't working. They aren't working, and they weren't working. And they weren't working because that's not how you get great change. How you get great change is in small pockets, running small experiments, validating those experiments, understanding what's working, and moving from there. So, I'm hoping that these are some of the new things that start coming out, because I think there's unstable economies that people are going to be dealing with. There's volatile markets. There's teams not being able to connect. Renee was talking about how her team is finding it super difficult. They don't want to have their videos on, and I'm a massive proponent of allow people that autonomy. If they don't want to have their videos on, don't force it. But what I have noticed, especially in remote work, is that you have to be more deliberate about creating ways and spaces for people to connect at a human level. And so you have to bake those in, and that actually takes extra time. So having a stand-up, but having a longer stand-up, so you've got 20 minutes to just connect as humans, or getting together for team socials. There's like so many interesting things that I've seen teams do. Some teams I heard of, they had like a team phone number, because some people were living alone during this lockdown, and they did a thing where if you ever needed anyone, then you just phone the team phone number, and like someone will be there to talk to you and all of that.
We have that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Where teams can get together. And what we did last week Friday, we had a team social, and we just all got together on Zoom, and we just spent 2 hours from 3 to 5 on Friday, just like shooting the breeze. If the spouses were around, we just included them, and if they weren't, then it didn't matter. And it was really just kind of just to connect with each other. So I think there's like so many things that are still going to come, and we don't actually know what all of it is and what the new is going to look like. So the first thing I guess is like, how do we become a little bit more okay with uncertainty?
Thanks, Jo. So there are quite a few challenges that people have been raising, and what we want to kind of get to before we leave some time for some questions is maybe tying two of our questions together. Is what is a challenge, and this should be, I think, to each of the panelists very briefly, what is your advice to our community from all of the discussions and all the complexity and the uncertainty? What is one thing that you think can make an impact? What is one small piece of advice that we can give all the attendees joining us on the webinar today? Berto, I don't know if you're ready to give your 2 cents on this.
Cool. So I think this ties into really what Joanne said. We need to find something else, because if after lockdown we're going to do what we did before lockdown, I think we will do the agile industry, if I can call it that, injustice. We have to find alternative ways to look at how we deal with certain problems, and not allow frameworks to think for us. Okay, so we need to really find ways to look at problems in a different way, to solve them in a different way, and start thinking as human beings, and not let processes think for us.
Well said. Well said.
I think it's the and you can see on the agile movement, like all over the world, all over the place, that authors are going back into the ideas that principles are what we need to be focused now in order to lead a different take on agility. And so that what Berto said is exactly that, right? You don't have time to actually understand the full blown out method and trying to come up with this transition period or plan to apply something to the organization. It's time to focus on what really matters, learn from the experimentation, and decide to move on in a specific path based on the results that you got. So yeah. So my suggestion, just to take to that, would be it is okay not to be okay. So we are in a situation that we might be inpatient, we might be locked at home, we might be suffering from a lot of anxiety in order to understand what's going to be the next. It is okay to stop, breathe, understand that this is a situation that we need to fully be aware of and learn from it. So it is okay not being okay.
Well said, Victor. Ken, what advice do you have for us in the Agile industry?
To encourage, because right now there is so much doubt and confusion and fear and uncertainty. And so what we've been saying is, I say, every single phone call you make, every single contact you make, say something that's uplifting and encouraging. And we have a little thing that we do when somebody phones us. They go, how are you doing? And we go, I'm hopeful, I'm happy, I'm healthy, and depends on who I'm talking to. I'd say I'm horny, and they laugh. They think it's funny, and they kind of like, oh, ha, 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 ha. And we keep that kind of like thread throughout the entire thing, because some of them are really, really going through tough times, and we're trying to empathize with them, and encouragement and upliftment and giving people hope. And I then say to them in closing, I say, I'm looking forward to Christmas, because things by then should have settled down. So we're looking forward to Christmas, and I love your idea about having a social. I'm going to get a glass of wine and get all my affiliates and my franchisees, and we're going to sit and have a glass of wine together. Great idea, Joe.
Pavel, do you have some words?
At least, can you still have wine? I ran out of wine about 5 weeks ago.
We've got good box wine here.
Yeah. So I want to say, I think I see a lot of companies making sweeping decisions in terms of, things about rent, think about face-to-face versus virtual. And I think, as Joanne saying, there's so much uncertainty. How can you make big decisions like that? So, there's big, hairy decisions. So I think instead, I think the companies and our clients and ourselves have to employ this agile experimentation method, right? So saying, how maybe when we go back, set up a few small experiments and see which one work best, because there's going to be problems if you move completely remote. How you learn from each other. So what about mentorship programs? What about apprenticeship, right? So how would people learn from each other if all you do is just do one-on-one calls, right? So there's a lot of learning by absorption, for example, which is someone in the office sitting next to you, they learning from you, right? So by just observing you. So I think one practical advice is when you go back, and by the way, we did some forward planning, and we did scenario planning. We said, what happens if a lockdown extends to December? Sorry, Ken. Might be Christmas. And what happens if a lockdown?
2021, Christmas 2021.
Yeah, here you go. So what happens when lockdown gets lifted suddenly, and what happens if you carry on like this? And the funny thing, the easiest scenario to plan was that nothing changes, that we'll continue to work remotely, right? So it was actually harder to plan to go back, because we now suddenly had to think of thermometers, the temperature logs, social distancing, and office spaces, and not touching each other, lunch boxes, and cutlery. So I think in the age of uncertainty, and it's going to persist for a bit, I think we need to build a culture of experimentation, trying this, getting the feedback, and and persisting the practices which will work, and then get rid of practices which actually are not beneficial for us.
Thanks, Pavel. Yes.
I like what Rian Ruiz said. He says, can we as Agilists not set the new norm? People really look up to us. Let us use it to set the standard again. I think as Agilists, we've built these transferable skills outside of using the word agile. So we've learned how to be good coaches, mentors, facilitators. So in the goal of trying to create these high-performing teams, etc., is how do we use those skills to ensure that we create the safety for the teams to operate? Because I think that's what they're looking for. They're looking for safety. There's so much anxiety around job loss, the holdback of pay, etc. So I think that's the thing that we need to focus on. And I think even beyond when lockdown is lifted, I think the economy is going to be impacted for a long period of time, and we will see fallout after that. So use our skills, what we've been trained and studied and got experience on to help people.
The lovely Joe.
Thanks. Yes. So one short one that I learned actually from my Satir training last year, which was put on your oxygen mask. So look after yourself as well, because if you're not looking after yourself, then you're often not going to be in the best shape to look after anybody else. So start there, make sure you're centered and you're doing well yourself, because then that will enable you to help others. So that's the first thing. Then I think the next most important thing is we're going to need to learn to run shorter, faster, more experiments and close our feedback loops even faster. And so, Scrum might even be 2 weeks, might even be too long for a sprint, those kinds of things, especially in smaller businesses and in like super fast moving markets. It's going to be super important to take context into perspective and to help people to create these spaces where we can get faster feedback, run shorter experiments, and then also to create that the right scaffolding for teams. If you just kind of throw them in the wild out there in this remote space, and then there's not enough constraints and not enough clarity and not enough direction, people don't know where to go, and they're just going to be going nowhere slowly or going everywhere, which is also going to be problematic. And so, we need to help leaders and teams create some very, very clear boundaries and very clear constraints so that they know, what are we trying to do? Where are we trying to go? What are we trying to optimize for? So that it's easier for them to make decisions and it's easier for them to get stuff done fast, and then, get feedback and reevaluate. So that's so put on an oxygen mask and experimentation.
Love that, Joe. Thank you. We did leave a little bit of time at the end for a couple of questions. Our dedicated panelists have been answering some of them already, and some of them have come throughout just answering the questions that we've brought up in the webinar. There is one question around a particular challenge concerning mental health. And Ken, I was quite curious to hear your thoughts on this. And that question was from Barry.
Excellent question. Absolutely excellent question. And as we all know, it's something that is pretty much ignored and everybody has an opinion on. And, there's this whole old mindset of just get over it. But the truth of the matter is that we're social beings, and we desperately need interaction with other people. And we've been denied that. And as a result of that, it starts all kinds of things happening in people which are almost uncontrollable if they don't know how to manage it. So what I've been saying to people is Google, there's lots and lots of stuff on YouTube just in terms of managing your own mindset. If you see any of the symptoms of being despondent or being despair or what's the word? Helping. That you actually address it and you acknowledge it. And there are people doing online, psychologists doing online courses at the moment. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're really starting to feel bleak and dark, go and look for help. And I often say this to people: if you have a thorn in your foot, you go to somebody and get it taken out. It's as simple as that. Don't be proud, go to somebody who can assist you with it. And, with that, the fact is that you are also probably the leader in your household, and you're going to have to guide and coach and carry your family through all this, and then your friends, and then the community, and so forth. More than that, I can't say. I'm not a psychologist, but I just say find somebody that you can trust and you can go to for assistance.
Thanks, Ken. That's really helpful. And it would be quite interesting to hear from more of an Agile perspective how we're seeing that kind of mental health challenge within teams, and what can we kind of give advice on it and see, you know, what is a way forward? How can we help our teams with that aspect? And I often find in this particular, in an agile role, that's sometimes falls onto us to bring to the fore, because people might not necessarily be thinking about that. Because I don't know if you have an opinion on that.
Look, I mean, I'm dealing with a team on a daily basis that are going through emotions and all different challenges themselves. So I think it's just providing space. So, you know, a space for them to behave the way they do. I know sometimes people get short because they're under stress or pressure. But I think by continuously just providing the opportunity for people to open up a little bit, so we don't go straight into work in our stand-ups. Obviously, we do a bit of a kind of how you're doing, kind of check as far as people's feelings, not necessarily deep dive into feelings, but just generally how they're doing, you know, and open up a conversation. And, you know, people tend to see how they're doing and they have an offline conversation to make sure that they're comfortable. You get that kind of sense, awareness of self and of others, that I think is quite important.
Thanks, yes. Victor, I don't know if you want to add anything in terms of the mental health space and any advice that you might have.
So it is interesting that sometimes it's not, when we're talking about mental health, it's not, you can have the professional aspect of it, like having help of a professional to help you through that. It is also interesting that we deal with the connection and other people also participating in their lives. You don't need to be physically present there. You might find someone that likes to cooking as much as you do, so you schedule maybe a conversation and a cookout where you both are sharing recipes and everything, and we kind of try to do that in order to maintain connection, right? So last week, for example, I'm a big fan of baking bread. So one of the ideas was, so I'm gonna bake bread and explain to my team how they're gonna like shape the dough and bake a loaf of bread. And that actually thought that would be just 2 or 3 weirdos that would like join in and participate into that. Ended up being over 30 people just participating into the conversation of baking bread, right? And
we've been making a lot of bread in South Africa as well, a lot of banana bread. So
yeah,
we can relate.
And there's also, I personally have been practicing a lot of meditation, and I try to exercise every day. But because because I kind of understand how I function, and to me, exercising, even if I'm not leaving the house, I need to exercise in order to maintain my mental health. So it's kind of there's this process of self. Like understanding yourself and seeing what works for you. You might be baking, you might be reading, you might be meditating, you might be exercising. So having those conversations with the team, it's also interesting in order to give an ideas and maybe connecting with people.
Thanks, Victor. We are at the hour. I want to say a very, very big thank you to all of our wonderful panelists for sharing your insights and ideas and giving us a little bit of inspiration to take back to not just our own lives, but to our teams and our organizations. We have recorded this session and we'll be making it available on YouTube. Thanks to all the attendees tonight for asking your questions and joining us for this wonderful conversation that's really, really important. And keep safe and stay well.
And I want to say thank you, Socotra, for being a great host for us. So I think once again, done an amazing job. So thank you very much.
Thanks,
Socotra.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.